just as I start recording, we have a few more students joining. Well, welcome everybody to our September TED Talks discussion club with Clifford and myself and all of you wonderful students who decided to come. We've got a pretty good sized room today, and the topic for today is innovation, which is very broad, and it allowed for a diversity of topics. I found two videos. Both of them, I believe, are under 15 minutes, so it should give us plenty of time to discuss, and they're actually very different. The first one, which I will share the link and the title for, because I'm actually going to play it. I would recommend for best quality to follow the link and play it on your own machine, but you could also you could watch it. I'm going to play it, but I'm going to pause the recording so we don't run into any copyright issues when I post the recording. So if you're watching the recording, then you will see the title, and I will share the title, and then you can watch the video, and then you can resume the recording. But the first one is called The Future of Fashion Made from Mushrooms by Dan Widmaier. And I had heard about this. It's actually made the news in a number of different areas. I think like Forbes has covered this, but it is a really interesting application of using mushrooms for some innovative things. So I'm going to share this video. So yeah, you can watch it from this stream, but if there's any internet issues, then it won't buffer. You might get it might get choppy, and it might be harder to understand. So I'm going to pause the recording, and this is The Future of Fashion. And feel free to comment in the chat as you're watching if you have any thoughts, and we will come back to discuss after this first video. We are back. Hopefully everybody has had a chance to watch that. Oh, and something is auto playing already. So I would love to hear what you all thought of this innovation in materials. Do you know of any other of these types of innovations that are taking natural materials, natural processes, and working to make more sustainable products or things to replace maybe more environmentally harmful products? Feel free to unmute. You can type in the chat. Glad, sounds like a lot of people enjoyed it. I'm glad when I watched it, when I was looking for videos, I watched and I was like, well, yeah, I was like, we got to include this one. It's very interesting. Timothy said, concerned about the sustainability of the Milo at first, explained how it was produced, was completely on board. Yeah, and I would be curious, and now that I have heard of it, and I had heard of it in some news stories, I am curious, like what else they do to it to make it into the final product, like if they add anything to it. Now, just having the raw material be much more sustainably sourced is a huge improvement, but another thing that's good to think about with products is what happens at the end of their useful life. What happens when they're worn out or broken? How can they be recycled or composted, or how can they end their life in a way that does not involve a landfill or incinerating it, something like that. So I'd be curious what the end of life cycle of the Milo is. Gary mentioned hemp. Yeah, do you want to talk about that, Gary?
No, I was going to jump on board with what you just mentioned, but now you threw me off because you called me out.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I totally spaced out. Well, I'm retracting until I remember what I was going to say.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you shared hemp, and then yeah, I was talking about the end of life cycle, and hemp is another one, and I came across it when I was in undergrad, and I just learned about what a sustainable fiber it is, and of course it's has a history that is challenging because of its association with the narcotic varieties of cannabis. But industrial hemp is making a comeback, especially in Canada. And I think I think in all of the US it's legal, but I think it's still heavily regulated to grow industrial non-narcotic grade hemp. Because you can make fiber out of it, you can make paper out of it, you can make construction materials instead of using wood. Rope, yep.
Insulation.
Yep.
I just saw an airplane made out of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
That's awesome.
And I was wondering about. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Gary, and then we'll hit Davina.
I was wondering about the lifespan of the mushroom wallet, because you were talking about what happens after its lifespan is complete. But I wonder if it lasts as long as leather.
Sure. Yeah, and I think maybe time will tell. And like you said, they're constantly improving upon the process of growing and processing and manufacturing it. So maybe that's, something that maybe it hasn't been out long enough to really get a feel for the long-term durability of it. But yeah, that's definitely things that I'm going to look into more. Go ahead, Davina.
I was just going to say, I just posted an article there. This is actually an open source. This is actually a scholarly article, but it's on 50 different uses for fungi, and from textile dyes to but it's a review of these different ideas. But it really amazes me how much fungi can potentially offer, and we barely scratched the surface. It's really, and our knowledge of fungi is really not that good, nor is our understanding of soil, of soil properties, of the biology of soils, particularly in natural ecosystems like virgin forest or virgin prairie. We're coming to realize that the soil is much more complex, and fungi are far more fascinating for all the things they do and all the chemicals they produce. So there's a lot of potential out there. Those of you that are trying to think about an interesting field in material science, I know that in the graduate it's plastics, but I think you could say now fungi if we were to do a redo of the movie The Graduate.
Davina, did you want to say something?
Yeah, very interesting point there. It's really amazing how the world is taking turn to just save ourselves from global warming, things like that. But it's it never really comes to my mind of like how useful this is. Yes, besides the materials that could be made, even the holistic standpoints of what fungi can do and what it can heal. And speaking of the material, I have what is this bamboo sheets, and it's very durable, it's very useful. Besides cotton, the material is soft. It's so much softer. I would say definitely get you some on Amazon. It's definitely worth the price. But another thing is when it comes to hemp, as when I used to work for a marijuana dispensary, hemp is something that is fantastic and is not as heavily regulated as opposed to its narcotic family, but the use for hemp is just it's so broad. You can use it, as we mentioned, for insulation, and even I guess for airplanes. That's cool. I learned just a couple of years ago, I actually wanted to get into the hemp business, grow it, and possibly make materials and things out of it. And I learned that you can create insulation. It's very, very durable, and it's I believe that it's like the materials more is breathable. So that was like one thing positive over like regular insulation. So I mean, yes, this is a great combo. I love it.
Thank you for sharing, Davina.
I was just wanted to speak about something real quick.
Yep. Go ahead, and then we'll hit Catherine.
Yeah. So the thing I was gonna say is, for those that were asking, like, how effective is it, or how long is it willing to last? Well, this guy has a degree in science and chemistry, and he's also has a passion for fashion. But in the midst of all that, since he is an innovator in making his own product, there has to be some kind of quality control established, and it had to go through testing phases. Yes, it might not have had like a certain amount of time so far, but since it's going to into effect, then I would say, like, obviously there is some kind of credit behind it. Um, and then as far as the innovation idea, like, I stand behind this guy because it just goes to show, like, yeah, he followed one approach, but he wanted to go another way, but he was able to tie those things together. Um, but this is a very interesting product, and how he was able to hold both wallets together, and you couldn't even really tell the difference. But I'm pretty sure they're both as durable. So, but the main point I wanted to get across was the whole, like, a quality control program must have been established for his product if he's making some kind of company. As far as like durability was.
Awesome. Thank you, Parrish. Excellent points. And I'm going to turn it over to Catherine.
I just did a quick research. I've just slightly read about Milo just through our research on growing mushrooms, which is definitely a really cool process. It takes forever. So it doesn't happen instantaneously. Although last night, walking in our backyard, we did find 10 of the woods growing off a cherry tree that is starting to, as we find, possibly die. But we used that on our pizza tonight, and it was absolutely fabulous. But I did do a little quick research from Milo, and what they're stating is that once the mycelium is harvested, the leftover byproducts are composted. So there's not a lot left over from that. So that's a very good thing, because that doesn't happen with leather. That just goes to landfills or wherever. But the fact that it's compostable is good, because there's not much left over then.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. Another point that he didn't really talk about either is the process, not only the process of producing leather, which is also a byproduct of the meat industry, but the process even of tanning leather involves a lot of chemicals. Like, there's ways that people used to do it naturally, but that's a longer process that doesn't necessarily create the same type of product that people are used to. So modern tanning creates a lot of waste, and it's a lot of times done in countries and areas of maybe, lower socioeconomic status, and it causes pollution issues and, water pollution, potential fumes or smells. Like, if anybody's ever been anywhere near a tannery, it's a incredibly potent and not pleasant smell. So there's
I was an environmental consultant in Massachusetts for a time, and one of the major projects our company was working on was a tannery from the 1800s, and the heavy metals was terrible. The heavy metals pollution there. It's just a mess of pollution. We wouldn't think about it, but it's just these are Superfund sites we're talking.
Thanks, Clifford. Ava.
I just wanted to bring up one point, that even if it doesn't last as long as leather, especially with fashion, we change things. How many purses do we own? How many wallets does my husband own? How many leather pairs of shoes do you have to have for work and travel? It would reduce the impact of having to have that much leather on the market. And you could do different colors, adapt it more for those type of seasonalities, just like we do our other fashion that we are into seasonally.
Awesome. Great points, Ava. Thank you for sharing. Timothy, I'm cheap. I've had the same wallet since I graduated basic training. Yeah, I've been a fan of, actually, wait, do I have it on me? Although it is made out of plastic, but it is recyclable, and I sent my old one in, but I don't know if anybody's heard of and I need to make sure I don't dox myself. It's called Mighty Wallet. And they come in different patterns, but it's made out of Tyvek, which is like the same stuff that some mailing envelopes and house wrap is made out of. But I don't know if you can see it. It's called Mighty Wallet, but it does say it's a number 2 recyclable. And my old one lasted like I want to say like 4 or 5 years, and they're very lightweight and small. But I'm not the biggest fan of that it's made out of plastic. But
I have a wallet that I love. That since we're talking about wallets, I can't show it to you. It's in the other room. It's made out of old bicycle inner tubes. And I will tell you, it does from somehow that the smell of rubber that's been removed from it. I have no idea how they manage that, but it is by far the most sturdy wallet I've ever owned. It's lasted for years now, and there's no sign of wear to it at all. Leather wallets I find wear out in just a few years, and this one is not changing. I think it's the last wallet I'll ever need to own. But yeah, cool.
yeah, Gary, I think they do that. I think that's pretty standard in a lot of areas, unless maybe you're in an extremely dry climate. Yeah, that's the main thing that I know that Tyvek is used for. But it's fascinating because it feels like paper, but you can't rip it. It's like super durable, because it's similar actually to the mycelium and the leather. It's not just woven. It's like all the fibers are all oriented many different ways, so you can't just find like an edge and like start tearing it.
It'll dull your knife blade after 3 cuts.
Wow.
You just burn up the blades when you're cutting that stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. Did anybody else have any thoughts? Any interesting? And Clifford and I were talking about this before it started, and I think I mentioned it in the chat as well. But if you're interested in learning more about mushrooms and fungi, there's an amazing documentary called Fantastic Fungi. I know it's definitely available on Netflix right now because that's where I watched it. But I think you might be able to, like, I think you could even like rent it on YouTube or like Amazon, or there's probably multiple ways that you can get it. But it's a beautiful. It's not very long. I think it's like an hour and 20 or an hour and 30, but a lot of beautiful like time lapse of mushrooms growing. And it just talks about like what we do know and how important they are to ecosystems. They have this amazing relationship with trees, and the mushrooms actually will trade trace minerals that they can more easily get from the soil. They'll trade those to trees, and trees will pay them in like sap that has carbohydrates like sugar in it, basically. So it's like this whole, and the mycelium can actually even transfer nutrients and things from mature trees to like growing saplings. It's incredibly fascinating, and just, yeah, like what we can use mushrooms for, and how important they are to ecosystems. Cannot recommend it enough.
Well, Mark, it's Linda. I was going to say that one of the elements that I heard from the speaker was that they're using vertical farming. And I don't know if it was one of your classes or one of Clifford's classes, but I think I did a paper. We're talking about how vertical farming can help with recycling water, and it can help with, the fact that it's hard for us to expand as humans side to side. So the vertical is another way that, we can kind of help conserve our ecological footprint. So I thought that was very interesting. I'm going to look into a little bit more about where they're farming. And as I was browsing, as I was Googling, looks like Korea is really doubling down on, I think they called it mycelium, and they were looking at it for not just for the fabrics and the fashion industry, but also as replacement for plant-based meat. So, and as someone who's now a pescatarian, I'm always looking for some kind of plant-based meat that will help with reducing the carbon footprint, not having to rely on all the ecological damage that cattle farming does, and just, really help reduce our footprint.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah. There's actually a company, and they carry it in the local grocery stores. I don't buy a ton of it because it does, I think, sometimes have egg whites in it as well, but it's called Quorn, Quorn, and it is like mycelium and mushroom based kind of like meat alternatives. Like I think they have like chicken nuggets and stuff. Some of the things are entirely plant or fungi based, but some of them still have eggs in them, which is something that I don't consume. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's I've seen a company that is growing, and it could be the same company that made the Milo leather, but they're growing that same kind of like puffy white mushroom. And they were like slicing it thin and somehow, and then like seasoning it and basically turning it into bacon, like a version of bacon that's like seasoned and flavored, and they probably must add some kind of fat to it, but that structure like provides like the meaty structure. So I've definitely seen that. But yeah, I think it's a huge, because yeah, mushrooms are very high in protein, and they do have a lot of other kinds of good minerals and nutrients and things that are beneficial. So it is a good alternative, to look at, to maybe replace some of our meat consumption.
You can get mushroom-based jerky, for instance, mushroom jerky. Instead of beef jerky or whatever, you could get it made out of mushroom. And of course, it's becoming very popular now. And I just signed up to try it out myself. A variety of mushroom coffees are coming out now too. Mushrooms are found to have all sorts of incredible benefits. I thought growing up, they're just these things that you eat that don't have much to them. But in fact, the nutrients that they provide are out of this world. They're incredibly healthy. Obviously, you don't want to eat the death cap. I have a friend who ate a death cap mushroom and survived. Didn't mean to, of course, do that, but you don't want to do that. He had quite the journey. He was airlifted to the hospital for that.
Yeah, that's why you definitely do not want to wild pick mushrooms unless you're with somebody who has a lot of knowledge and experience and is very sure of identification. Although in my area, there are a few so a wild forage mushroom means that it's actually quite difficult to grow, or difficult or impossible to grow, like to cultivate it, like to purposefully grow it, because it actually needs to be established in an area of land symbiotically with the trees and plants in the soil, sometimes for like decades before it actually even sends up fruiting bodies. Like, so the part that we call the mushroom is actually just the reproductive. It like goes up and puts out its spores, but way more of the mass of that organism is underground in these mycelial root-like structures. That's why truffles are so expensive, because you can't just grow truffles. Truffles exist in nature and have been in an area for decades before they actually even start producing the truffle that we want to eat. So yeah, like in my area, like morels are very choice, and yeah, they're relatively easy to identify. There aren't very many things that look like a morel that are dangerous, but you still need to be careful in your area. But like in my area, if it looks like a morel, 9 times out of 10 it is a morel, and there's a few ways to like tell if it's not. And then chanterelles are also relatively easy in my area to identify safely. But
yeah, there's still, even with those, there's the jack-o'-lantern. Jack-o'-lantern looks like a lot like a chanterelle, and fortunately, there are very easy, in both cases, very easy tests that I don't require like chemical analysis. Very easy tests to determine just quick visual which you have. So they're not too bad. And chicken of the woods is another one that's pretty easy to deal with. So Mark, shall we dive into our next one? I'm worried we're going to run out of time for the second video, and I don't even know what it is. So I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, this one is called "How Great Leaders Innovate Responsibly," and this is quite a different video. It is the perspective of somebody who is has been a leader in business and entrepreneurship, and let's see, their name is Ken Chenault. And I'm going to provide the link, and then I'm going to share my screen so that the people watching the recording can see it. There, I'm guessing that you can see the title, How Great Leaders Innovate Responsibly, Ken Chenault, from June 20th, 2022. And I'm going to start playing it right after I resume share. So that one was quite different, not so much a product or a technology, but an innovative way of thinking about and investing in and organizing businesses and corporations, which, as Ken mentioned, historically have thought most about profits and maybe not so much about its social or environmental impact. But there are some positive things. I posted, there's a type of corporation called a B Corp or a B corporation or a social purpose corporation, which are different ways of, I guess, different kind of missions. And I think it also has different types of tax and governance impacts on those corporations. But does anybody have any thoughts about how, because, whatever your thoughts are on capitalism and our system of the way that we've structured our economy, it's not likely going to drastically change in a major way before we need to make more positive changes. So how can we be innovative within that system that we have to affect more positive outcomes? Does anybody have any thoughts? Davina, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, I definitely have a thought to share. As the key thing that I took from what he said is just focusing on the groups that are marginalized, but as coming, in a more comprehensive way, coming with, ideas that are going to not just focus on, what is not tangible, but focus on what we are able to do, like, the whole search and trade schools, things like that are definitely a huge impact for our communities as I've seen certain philosophers create charter schools and certain areas have, I can definitely, I'm sorry, my little child is in the background, but you can definitely see the effect that is positive from that. So just pushing those ideas, focusing on getting everybody the resources that they deserve, pushing ourselves to represent for everybody. That's the point of equity and even inclusion. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Davina. Wonderful points. Yeah.
Can I second what she said as well? So I'm actually in a class right now. I'm in the Introduction to Human Services class, and that's actually a point they brought up is, the negative stigma of like hiring certain races. But I actually combated that statement with a couple classes I did in the past too, is being more innovative, especially in such a higher position. Why not hire on those immigrants, or why not hire on those minorities when, not to be negative in any way, but the article I found instead that immigrants are willing to work actually much harder than the average American, because it's more of a sense of living that American dream, or that sense of pride. And this isn't just seen as a 9-to-5 job to them. This is seen as providing for their family. So a way you could be more innovative is, instead of agreeing with those negative stigmas, in fact, why not take on those negative stigmas and improve the general welfare of your company to open more diversity in those kind of groups?
Yes, I just wanted to just piggyback off of me, but it's so important to, yes, to think and push innovation. That is what is going to push sustainability for all of us. As mentioning that we are in a capitalistic nation, it's about you being able to capitalize on any and everything. And at the end of the day, we are all workers and we are all, important assets to push our economy as a whole. And being the fact that, sometimes people think of population control or things like that as a way of making resources sustainable, which is not always the case, which speaking of classes, the current class that I am in, speaking learning about economics, and there is an article that does speak about how being how, accepting of everyone's ideas and everyone's inventions, and pushing that, would certainly help all of us and certainly increase basically income for everyone, I would think.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. Got a few more minutes left. Does anybody else want to share any thoughts? I did post in the chat if anybody, there are a lot of companies, both, I guess national brands, like if you've ever seen Dave's Killer Breads, they're usually in like the natural or kind of specialty. They're a little bit more expensive than your average loaf of like Wonder Bread, but yeah, I enjoy them too. I usually try to buy them when they're on sale, but yeah, they provide a job opportunities to formerly incarcerated individuals, which is another demographic that oftentimes faces a lot of discrimination and difficulty finding jobs. And so that's like a company that is for profit, makes a profit, but has a social purpose and goal as well, that kind of is the foundation of what they do. Pear shared, I was a mechanic in the military. What I was taught in school was nowhere opposed to OJT, on the job training. Okay. Prepares you way better to be innovative and learn more skills opposed to bare minimum curriculum. Yeah.
Can I speak?
Yep, go ahead.
I think both, it's all about sustainability, and I think both are sort of necessary. If you got the trade school prior to OJT, then you go in with a little more formal understanding of what you're approaching. Whereas if you learn through experience, and I have the scars to prove that was my path, then the trade school or this is more formalizing what you already knew, or putting it into context that's relatable to your peers that you're working with. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Gary. Yep. That's what, and I think, because obviously everyone here is pursuing their degree, which is, there's a lot of value in a general, higher education, like a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science, because you get a well-rounded experience. You learn a lot from different fields, different disciplines. You kind of get a greater appreciation of a lot of things versus a like a very focused type of skills training, which is also valuable, and I think it just depends on what your goals are and what kind of career you're looking for. But yeah, thanks everybody for sharing. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up? Anybody who maybe hasn't contributed yet?
This Barbie, just wanted to say the information was very informative. I was not aware of all of the work that Mr. Chenault is doing. I will definitely research further to help build on my knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you to everybody who shared and contributed to the discussion in the chat, and also coming on and speaking and sharing with your peers. So I think we're going to wrap.
Thank you so much. I was gonna speak briefly. Well, two things we need to be sure to do, Mark. I don't know if you have the link yet. Those of you that are here that are in honors, a reminder to fill out a Qualtrics form to record your hour that you're here. If you don't know what that is, you don't think it applies to you, don't worry about that. But if you do, a reminder to do that, and hopefully Mark will put that in his chat, because I can't open the page at the moment. But I also wanted to do kind of an advert for next month, where we're going to be talking about Indigenous people. October 12th used to be Columbus Day. Some of us still call it that. It's also becoming Indigenous Peoples Day. And we're going to be looking at issues involving Native peoples around the world. I'm in the middle right now of an 8-week workshop from an organization called the Pachamama Alliance, which is an environmental group looking at how do we live more sustainably and ways of living and thinking of our indigenous them. And we also need to recognize. So I hope you get a chance to join me for that next month. And I don't remember November's. I do remember December is on consumerism. I think I was a little bit crazy when I came up with that one, but it is the month of consumerism. So anyway, so I encourage you to come to future ones. I want to turn back over to Mark, but thank you all so much for coming tonight. It's wonderful for both of us to see some of our current or past students here. And thank you so much to all of you for carving this block of time out of your day to join our conversation. So Mark, I'll let you say any last words there.
Yep, I think you pretty much covered it, Clifford. I did post the link in the chat. And if you're in this live session, or if you're watching the recording, make sure to fill that out. If you are in the honors program, not the honors college, but if you're in the new honors program as of July 2021, then make sure you fill that out so you can track that and count it towards your required hours. But
November is the future, so that will be an interesting one.
Yes, and thank you, everybody. I always, these are one of my favorite live events, the TED Talks discussions, because they're the discussion, the talks themselves are always interesting, and the discussions and just hearing everybody's perspective and thoughts.
So Adriana, let me answer your question. How can we track our hours? There's actually a spreadsheet that Mark created just for that purpose, a PLA tracking spreadsheet, which is available in the honors learning community. And if you're not sure what that means or how to get to it, just email me or Mark, one of us, and we'll help you get there. But the form that you need to track your hours is there.
Yes, and to address Davina's question, yes, for each individual activity, you should write the reflection, and that will help when you go to claim your one PLA hour. You need to write up a rationale paper, which is like, what did I learn and how did I apply what I learned? And you can draw from your reflections, and also so you can remember what you did learn. Now, if you did some sort of event or activity that was multiple hours, you only need to do one reflection per event or activity, not per hour. So that is one clarification. But I'm going to stop recording, and I look forward, I hope, to see some of you in future events. We have
And if you have any other honors questions, I don't know, Mark may have to go, but I'll stick around for another minute or two in case there's any other questions about the honors program and PLA and all that. So be happy to answer them.
I'm gonna stop recording right now.